One of the amusing experiences of being a parent is witnessing a child as he or she begins to develop a sense of self and independence. When I reflect on this, I'm reminded of the period when my boys began to insist that they be allowed to dress themselves. My wife thought it was a novel idea. I, at first, was a bit unraveled by it. Today is the 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time. The readings today bring us to a meditation about how Jesus sees us in our effort to establish and hold the connection to Jesus, which is proper and particular for us as unique individuals. In the first reading, Elijah is hiding in Zarephath, avoiding King Ahab. Elijah has declared to Ahab that a drought will settle on the land because Ahab married Jezebel, a pagan, and then encouraged his people to worship her pagan god, Baal. In Zarephath, God directs Isaiah to a widow with a small child. She is suffering because of the drought, running out of food and hope. Elijah asks her for some bread and a cup of water. This favor from the widow would exhaust their food and bring her and her child to starvation and death. Elijah assures her that she is not to be afraid and she should do as he asks. It's a moment of faith for the widow. She is, on the one hand, faced with her grim situation. On the other hand, she receives a promise of life from a stranger who is rumored to know a living God. She chooses to have faith in Elijah and his God. That faith is rewarded with a jar of flour that does not go empty and a jug of oil that always holds enough. Together, it fed the widow, her child, and Elijah for a year. Now, because of their ages, each boy went through the experiment in dressing themselves at different times. Therefore, only one child appeared in the morning with his t-shirt inside out. Only one walked the streets with two different colored socks. Only one wore his shoes on the wrong feet. Only one insisted on wearing a feathered war bonnet wherever he went. Initially, I was shocked at seeing what my wife was prepared to allow to wander in public. I protested, but she calmly explained to me that this little creature who was masquerading as one of my children was harmless and temporary. Then she taught me to say to the curious, "He dresses himself." In the gospel today, Jesus and the disciples are observing people as they make payments to the treasury. The reading begins by highlighting the well-to-do scribes, who Jesus identifies as a people connected in this world. They use their influence to elevate themselves at the expense of the poor and the powerless. These are connected to the world in spite of their posturing and their long prayers to the contrary. Jesus then directs the attention of the disciples to a poor widow who has approached and paid the only 2 coins that she possesses. Jesus draws the contrast between those who are well off, who look to their own wants before the needs of others, and the widow who gives all that she has in this world, trusting that God will provide for her needs. The period of I dressed myself changed over time. Once in kindergarten, other children became part of the daily routine. Dressing myself changed to dressing like my friends. By the time the boys reached their teens and girls became more than a nuisance, dressing to impress became the theme. When they entered the world of work, they began to dress for success. Now, as adults, I dress myself as their signature of how each one sees himself in life. So what's dressing oneself got to do with widows, Elijah, bread and oil? And what does Jesus reveal to the disciples and us as he observes the scribes and the poor widow? The second reading provides some clues. Paul's writing to the Hebrews is possibly a homily that was presented in a synagogue, ergo the Hebrews. It is an encouragement to a group who may have become weary of the demands of their Christian faith. In the portion that we hear today, Paul is emphasizing the importance of Jesus as a high priest who, by his own suffering and blood, entered into heaven to appear before God on our behalf. Paul makes it clear that Jesus is far above the local priests who enter the temple annually to spill animal blood as atonement for sins. Paul goes on to remind the listeners that this Jesus will bring salvation to those who eagerly await him. In our lives, in this church, we await his return, and we learn about Jesus and his promise. Just as the widow who believes and is given life, we are told the stories, taught the lessons, exposed to the great wealth of tradition, scripture, and the guidance of the magisterium. Just as the widow who chooses God over the world, trusting that God will provide the right and the good things that she needs, we, through our life, try on what we are given. Some things may feel backwards. Some may not match who we are. Some may seem inside out. So we continue to dress ourselves, looking for Jesus in the truths that speak to us the loudest, looking for him in our own unique gifts. And as we mature, our dress changes, reflecting our maturing faith and belief. The readings today offer a meditation that invites us to remember that in a world of false lifestyles, insincere promises, and unsatisfying outcomes, Jesus is faithful. Jesus sees us and knows that we are trying. He tells us to trust in him and not to be afraid. So we dress ourselves. We dress ourselves to discover what is true and good. We dress ourselves to move closer to Jesus.